I lived alone in a small apartment on the outskirts of town. Not that I liked being alone, but it was cheaper and easier. An old house with crumpled walls and thin walls through which one could hear the neighbors cough and their beds creak. That evening I came home late. It was raining outside the window and the air was filled with the smell of wet asphalt. There was only one lamp in the driveway and its yellow light trembled like a flame of candles. When I approached the door, I was seized by anxiety. I never left the door open. Never. Slowly shoving it, I looked inside. The apartment was dark, quiet, but the feeling of someone else's presence gnawed at me from the inside. I turned on the hallway light. Everything looked fine. Maybe I just forgot to close the door in the morning? Walked into the living room, turned on the TV to muffle the worrying thoughts. "You're just tired," I comforted myself. But as soon as I sat on the sofa, a noise came from behind the bathroom door. I stopped. As I felt my heart beat wildly, I took a deep breath. Rat. Yes, rat. I was mentally convincing myself. Or just the wind. But taking the kitchen knife, I still went to the bathroom. When I slammed the door open, it slammed against the wall. Inside, nothing. But something was written on the mirror, which was clouded with moisture. "I'm here." I didn't know what to do. I'm not paranoid, but I didn't write it. Waving the inscription with my trembling hand, I tried to convince myself that it was a joke of the mind. That night I didn't sleep. Every sound behind the wall, every crack of the floor made me tremble, and in the morning a new strangeness was discovered. I knew that I closed the kitchen cabinet before going to sleep, but now it was open, and on the inside, cup. Just a cup, upside down. I was trying to find a rational explanation. Maybe I forgot how I left it. But I was tormented by one question. If the cup is turned over, it means that someone took it and then carefully put it back. On the third day, sounds started. I was working on my laptop when I heard a quiet squeak from the bathroom. I turned slowly. The door to the bathroom, which I had left closed, was now slightly open. I stepped closer and stood still. Under the door is a faint shadow. Someone was standing there. "Who's here?" My voice sounded weaker than I'd like. Silence. I couldn't stand it. The door burst open. Inside is empty. But something has changed. The towel hanging on the hook was now lying in the sink. I felt myself being observed. There was a barely perceptible smell of someone else's presence in the air. A mixture of old sweat, damp walls, and something else. Rotting. I decided to do an experiment. That evening, I laid flour on the floor in the hall. If anyone is here, I'll see the tracks in the morning. The night was restless. I woke up from the cold, as if someone was standing by my bed and looking at me. My heart pounded, but I dared not open my eyes. This morning, I saw the result of the experiment. On the floor are clear footprints of bare feet. But the worst, they started from inside my apartment. It meant only one thing. Someone has been here before, and he never left. I couldn't stay any longer. I just left the apartment and didn't come back. But when I was about to leave, the phone vibrated with the notification. Motion camera alert. I clicked on the video. On the recording, someone was standing in the corridor where I was just a minute ago. He was looking straight at the camera. And then, not moving, he smiled. I was 17 when this happened. My parents had gone away for the weekend, leaving me alone in the house for the first time. At first, I enjoyed the freedom, eating junk food, watching horror movies, and staying up late. It was winter and a thick fog had rolled in, swallowing the neighborhood in its ghostly embrace. By 10 p.m., the streetlights outside were barely visible. Everything beyond the backyard was just a wall of white nothingness. I was curled up on the couch, scrolling through my phone, when I noticed something move past the window. I froze. I stared at the glass, heart pounding. It could have been a trick of the fog, or my imagination, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was out there. Taking a deep breath, I forced myself to get up and check. I switched on the porch light. Nothing. The fog outside was thick, swirling lazily under the yellowish light. I squinted, trying to see beyond it, but there was only empty darkness. Maybe I was just tired. I turned off the light, locked the doors, and went back to the couch. But a minute later, I saw it again. A dark silhouette stood just outside the window. I jumped up, my stomach twisting in fear. My first instinct was to run upstairs and hide, but I forced myself to stay calm. I grabbed my phone and quickly took a picture of the window. When I looked at the screen, my blood ran cold. There wasn't just one figure. There were two, both standing side by side facing the window. I hadn't even seen the second one with my own eyes. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just my imagination. I was being watched. I ran through the house, double-checking every door and window. They were all locked, but that didn't help, because whoever they were, they hadn't tried to break in. They were just standing there. I turned off every light in the house and retreated upstairs to my room. I didn't want them to see me. For the next hour, I sat in bed, staring at the door. My heart pounded in my chest, ears straining for any sound outside. Then, around midnight, I heard it. Crunch, crunch. The sound of footsteps in the snow. I wanted to call the police, but what would I say? There are people standing outside my house? That wasn't illegal, so I just sat there, listening. The footsteps circled the house, slowly, methodically, as if they were searching for a way inside. At one point, they stopped directly outside my bedroom window. My breath caught in my throat. I stared at the window, terrified that if I moved, they'd see me. Then came the worst part. They knocked. I squeezed my eyes shut. I didn't move. The knocking came again, soft, rhythmic, almost playful. I forced myself to stay still. Then, silence. I don't know how long I stayed like that, frozen in fear. But at some point, exhaustion took over, and I drifted into a restless sleep. When I woke up, the first thing I did was check the window. There were new footprints in the snow. They didn't lead away from the house. They led back to the window. And in the condensation on the glass, there was a smiley face drawn with a finger. I didn't care anymore. I grabbed my phone and called the police. I didn't even know what to say. There are footprints outside my house? Someone knocked on my window in the middle of the night? They said they'd send a patrol car to check. While I waited, I crept downstairs. Sunlight streamed through the windows now, making everything feel less terrifying. But when I reached the back door, my stomach dropped. The lock was undone. The door was slightly open. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. They hadn't just been outside. They had been inside. The police found nothing. The footprints in the snow were real, but they led away from the house, vanishing into the trees. No signs of forced entry. Nothing stolen. Just a smiley face on my window. I never found out who they were, or why they were there. But sometimes, on foggy nights, I feel like they're still watching, waiting, smiling. I had been living in my house for 3 years before I ever set foot in the basement. It wasn't that I was scared of it. It was just unnecessary. The basement was unfinished. Cold concrete floors, exposed pipes, and a damp, musty smell that never really went away. There was no reason for me to go down there. But that changed one night when I heard a noise from below. It was late, close to 2 a.m. I had just turned off the TV and was heading to bed when I heard it. A soft scraping sound. At first I thought it was coming from outside, but as I stood still, listening carefully, I realized it was coming from the basement. I walked to the basement door, my heart pounding. I wasn't sure what I expected, but I still hesitated before turning the handle. It was unlocked. That was strange. I was certain I always kept it locked. Taking a deep breath, I pulled the door open. A rush of stale, cold air greeted me, carrying with it the scent of damp concrete and something else. Something rotten. I flicked on the light. The single bulb at the bottom of the stairs flickered weakly, casting long, shifting shadows along the walls. I took a step down, then another. The scraping sound had stopped. The basement was silent now. I scanned the room. Nothing seemed out of place. A few old storage boxes, some broken furniture, and a rusted tool rack lined the walls. The only door in the basement was to the small utility room in the back, which housed the old water heater. It was slightly open. My stomach twisted. I hadn't been in that room in over a year. So why was the door open? I forced myself to move forward. Every step echoed slightly, the concrete cool beneath my bare feet. When I reached the utility room door, I hesitated. Then, gathering my courage, I pushed it open. Nothing. The water heater sat in the corner, humming softly. A few rusted pipes snaked along the walls. That was it. But then I saw it. On the wall, just beside the door frame, was a handprint. It was smeared and uneven, like someone had pressed their hand against the wall and slowly dragged it downward. The worst part? It was fresh. I turned around quickly, scanning the basement. My pulse pounded in my ears. There was no one here, but someone had been. Recently. I stepped back toward the stairs, trying to stay calm. But as I reached the second step, I heard something that made my blood run cold. Breathing. It was slow and deep, coming from somewhere in the basement, somewhere close. I spun around, my breath hitching in my throat. Nothing. But I knew what I heard. I knew I wasn't alone. I didn't run. I didn't scream. I simply backed up the stairs step by step, keeping my eyes on the basement. I shut the door. I locked it. And then I did something I had never done before. I pushed a chair against the door and sat there, waiting, listening. I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, it was almost dawn. For a moment, I thought I had imagined it all. Maybe I had just been dreaming. Then I saw it. Scratches. Deep, jagged scratches lined the bottom of the basement door, as if something had tried to claw its way up. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. My hands shook as I reached for my phone. I called the police. I didn't have a good explanation, but I told them I had heard someone in my basement. That was enough. When they arrived, 2 officers searched the house thoroughly. They found nothing, no signs of forced entry, no evidence of an intruder. But then one of the officers called me over. He had opened the basement door and was shining his flashlight on the stairs. At first, I didn't understand what he was pointing at. Then I saw it. A set of footprints. They weren't mine, and they weren't going down into the basement. They were coming up. I didn't stay in that house much longer. A few weeks later, I hired a contractor to check the foundation, just in case. I didn't tell him why. I just wanted to be sure there was no way someone could be living down there. A few hours into his inspection, he called me down. He had found something, a trap door. It was under the utility room leading to a small hidden crawl space. There were blankets down there, empty food wrappers, and a small dirty notebook. It had names written inside. The last name? Mine. The police investigated, but whoever had been living there was long gone. To this day, I still don't know how long they had been watching me, how many nights they had spent just beneath my feet, listening as I slept. But I do know one thing. That night when I heard the noise, it wasn't them trying to get in. It was them trying to get out.